Hello guys and girls, and welcome back to another episode of Seb Talks Sports, sponsored by Hoopin and Luton, the place to go to for your favourite new and vintage jerseys and apparel from all things basketball. That intro music and podcast theme was created by All-Pro New York Giants running back, now music creator and friend of the show, David Wilson. Go and check him out on all of his social media platforms at Fourstone Running on Twitter and Instagram, and his music under David E. Wilson across all good music streaming services. He's free for business, so drop him a message if you want some beats for your podcast, adverts, commercial, absolutely anything you need. Before I get into this episode, I just want to say that if you're not already following Seb Talks Sports across all platforms, then please do. You can find me on Facebook, Seb Talks Sports, YouTube, Seb Talks Sports, Twitter at Seb Talks Sports, and Instagram, where I'm primarily active. Again, it's at Seb Talks Sports. Today, I've got another brilliant guest on my show, making it 2 rugby players in as many episodes. Former England international and Wasps legend, who played 9 years, more than 100 games, scoring over 200 points for the club, even taking home the 2000 to 2001 Premiership Rugby Top Try Scorer Award. It's of course the fantastic Paul Sampson. Enjoy. My guest today is a former England international rugby player and 2000 to 2001 Premiership Rugby top try scorer who played 9 years, over 100 times and scored more than 200 points for the London Wasps. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome Paul Sampson to Seb Talks Sports. Paul, how are you?
Very well, thanks, Seb. Thank you for a wonderful intro. Thanks for having me on.
Very, very welcome. Looking forward to getting into it. Let's go right back to the beginning, the early days of Paul Sampson. So what are your earliest memories of playing rugby, and who was your sporting inspiration growing up? Who did you look up to?
Yeah, my earliest memory was when I didn't score the try that I just nearly scored. Actually, I was so into the NFL at the time. So I slammed the ball down between my legs instead of scoring the try. So that was at Bronte House School. I do remember the reception from my teammates or the lads on the team at the time. I was playing a couple of years below, and I got some stick for that. Inspirations. My gosh, there's so many. Obviously, mum, dad. Mum was in English schools, high jump champion. Dad just kept me training, and sort of into my teens especially. My cousin Dean played rugby league professionally, so I was going to watch him on a Sunday, watching him perform in front of thousands of people. That was a huge inspiration. My auntie Denise, who's no longer with us sadly, but she's an Olympian. She ran in the 4x1 at the Montreal Olympics in '76. Rocky Balboa, if I'm allowed to say that, because you watch the film as a kid and, you believe it's reality. And I know what effect that had on me. He certainly taught me how to train hard and what that might look like.
Yeah.
School was very important. My 2 school teachers, really, rugby teachers, David Garner, again, no longer with us, sadly, but Bronte House, and then Roger Howard at Woodhouse Grove School. But I was very lucky. My whole environment was very geared towards sport. So I think growing up, it wasn't a conscious thing. But then it comes to sort of player, definitely would have been a bit later in the day, Christian Cullen.
Sporting background there. It's good to see.
Yeah, huge. It was just, it was, as I say, it really was environment. I was very lucky. So you're surrounded with inspiration, not really understanding that that's inspiring at the time. So, lucky. And, the whole family. My brother was into his rugby. Everyone was into their rugby. And, so you want to prove yourself. My dad was a very important part of that because he kept me honest in terms of my training. Made me feel guilty when I didn't. Not that he tried to, it just happened like that. And then, but he always made predictions and he was always right. It was bizarre. So when he was right, I believed in him. So when he said train, you kind of listen. So it's just absolutely amazing sort of childhood growing up, and it's exciting, very exciting.
Very nice. And it's clear to see all that hard work, of course, paid off very shortly, because after a stellar youth career and emergence as a top-level talent at a very young age, including a man-of-the-match performance in the England schools record 30-3 win against Australia in '95, you received interest from none other than the great Nigel Melville, asking you to join Wasps, who were on their hunt for their first ever Premiership title. And I know Nigel was previously a player coach at Otley, so I'm not sure if your paths crossed then, but how did it feel to put pen to paper on your first pro contract as a player and win the title in your very first season?
Gosh, yeah, you have to take me back there. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, paths did cross. Nigel asked me to play for Otley, and that's again why school was so important to me. School allowed me to play for the first team at school, and then alternate weeks I played for Otley. So that was a big call for school, really, at that time. So I was playing well, and I was getting senior rugby at the same time, so able to kind of showcase myself on in senior rugby. So yeah, paths did cross. Actually, I was going to sign for Bath. I was also slightly toying with the idea of signing for Wigan. I had Maurice Lindsay at the house a couple of times in his big car and wafting the cash around. But no, I opted for Wasps because of I knew Nigel Melville. I was familiar and thinking back, what I can remember, he also offered me first team rugby straight away, which I duly got. So, absolutely. Why I would have any regrets? I certainly don't. It was a very exciting time of period of my life. So yeah, but it felt amazing, as it would do. I think with any rugby player, we forget how lucky we are. We think it's just a process sometimes. We don't give it the respect it's due. Sometimes we're very lucky to be able to realise our dreams. So from 7, 8 years old, probably my dad told me that I could be a rugby player before I believed it. But when you realise that, putting pen to paper, yeah, it's fantastic at the time. It really is.
It's great to hear. And obviously, 96 is when your Wasps career started. And by the time it ended, after 8 seasons, over 100 caps, 206 points, 3 titles, the top try scorer award for the league on the 2000-2001 season. And now being a member of the Wasps Legends Charitable Foundation, I think it's fair to say you've cemented your legacy as one of the club's greatest players of all time. So that being said, with respect to your ex-teammates, coaches, and all of the fans, what do the London Wasps organisation mean to you?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, it's you do your research. But yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. It's Wasps. Wasps is an organisation. It is a club. But I have to stress, it's more than that. If you are lucky enough to have been involved in it at London Wasps, or Wasps as they're more familiarly known now, it's more than that. It is a family. It's different to other clubs. It's reflected in just the amount of relationships that are maintained through the Wasps Foundation. The amazing work that the Wasps Foundation do. I think we've raised nearly £1 million since we formed. Wow. We support 2 charities, mainly 2 charities a year, and smaller charities off that. And I think on our WhatsApp group, there's 250 members on the WhatsApp group alone. So Lawrence actually put it into words beautifully in the summer during one of the lockdowns. Did a small video on the group, and he said Wasps. He said Wasps is not. It's not about the place. It's not a place. It's about the people. And Wasps is a bit of a brotherhood. It's a bond for life. It's fantastic. So we're very proud of what we do. Wasps is very much, about love and support for each other. And as I say, we hope that's reflected in the foundation and certainly the connections that we maintain. So yeah, it's a joy, and it's a very special place. Yeah.
Very good. I'll make sure to leave all the links down below to all of the charity stuff you're doing at Wasps, because people will definitely be able to help out, and hopefully we'll go and support you with that, because that's some great stuff you're doing there. Okay, so as well as rugby union, of course, you had a couple of stints playing in the game's main other code, rugby league. You made 17 appearances in the 99 to 2000 season for Wakefield, as well as winning a few caps for the London Broncos in 2004. So what was it that made you want to delve into the other discipline of rugby, and how did the two differ for you personally compared to union with regards to physical and mental preparation?
Well, I always wanted to have a go, because that fire was lit from a very early age. I mean, I was playing with and against other players that went on to play, rugby league at the highest level. But I just decided union. So there was always kind of that desire, obviously with my cousin, as I just mentioned, playing rugby league. My uncle Malcolm, he was a try scorer at Wembley, in 68, I think it was, for Wakefield Trinity. And I was just surrounded by rugby league. I was a rugby league family, in a rugby league family. So there's always the desire. And then maybe potentially sort of in hindsight, I did move a little bit too quickly from Wasps. At the time, I just wasn't getting the opportunities that I thought I should be getting. My ego thought I should be getting. And, when players in your position clearly weren't playing as well and sort of fulfilling their potential, but you still weren't getting a look. As I say, perhaps a little bit quick to move, but I was being given offers all the time. So, it was difficult for me. I thought, well, is now the time then, that I maybe look to sort of make a mark in another, in another form. So I did. Rugby League at Wakefield was quite disjointed, really. We lost our coach after 6 or 7 games. Then it was sort of the fitness guy that was taking the lead, and then I was always seemed to have different centres to play with, which it was difficult to form relationships with a decent centre that could put you away, as well as I had a lot to learn about the game as well. I just didn't feel I was receiving as much as I would have liked. Kind of dropped in at the deep end, although I'd played, sort of growing up anyway. So a very different game. Dropped straight into the Super League. Having said that, the club went into administration then, but there's the threat of that for half the season anyway. So it was kind of it was a really tough year, if I'm being honest. But it was then when I went back to London Wasps and had a fantastic year, had the best year I've ever had. Mentally and physically. Came back from Wakefield the fittest I've ever been. The demands of the league game at the time and the demands of the union game were seemingly different. I don't know why, but I just came back so fit, and the game of union came relatively easy to what I'd previously known. And mentally just felt sharper, less to think about. That's what happens when you're so fit. So it seems a long time ago now, and then my stint at London Broncos was a favour really. I was struggling really. I had no club at the time. I'd missed a pre-season again through injury, and it was Tony Ray at Broncos that was just doing me a favour. Played a few times, but again, you can't play league if you're missing pre-seasons. It's, I was trying to concentrate on not being sick from the effects of overload and fatigue. You can't be sick on the field when you're just exhausted halfway through the first half. But that's just how demanding that game is. So that wasn't a great experience, and but it is all experience. I won't change any of it. I just wish, I think a second or third year at the right time of my career could have been different. Maybe right at the start. Who knows? But, as I said, I still wouldn't change any of it.
Very nice. Well, you just touched on injury there. I want to delve into one specific injury. So in 2002, you sustained a knee injury while playing for England during the Dubai Sevens, which required reconstructive surgery and meant you would be sidelined for up to 12 months, effectively ending your chances of making the England squad for next year's World Cup. And we all know what happened there. So how much of a challenge did that prove to you, both mentally and physically, given you were just 25 at the time and had a lot of your career still to play? And what kept you motivated during your recovery to return to the game after such a long time out?
Gosh, yeah. It's a year out's a long time, isn't it? I think you're still getting paid by your club, so you have your obligations to fulfill. It's a huge challenge, a challenge that I would view very differently now with all the experience and perspectives that I have now. But for young players, it's tough. There's also you're trying to train hard and go forward and progress, not knowing what you're going to find out when you come back. What kept me motivated? I just didn't feel ready to finish. I just didn't feel, I was never going to just, I was going to train as hard as I possibly could. I trained too hard in some respects, in terms of, I thought it was an opportunity to get some size on. The game was certainly going that way. And I thought, right, train like a bodybuilder. So I did that as well. But, it's no good if you, well, it was just off kilter, there's all sorts of things that go through your mind, and I wasn't ready to finish. I was also sad that it was, such a huge part of my parents' life as well. So I thought I had to honour that. They used to come and watch me every single game, and some of the games abroad. It was part of their life, so I just kind of had that in the back of my mind. I wanted them to get back to normal life, and me versus the injury again, ego. I'm not going to, it was literally me versus, I'm not going to let this one stop me. And I had to get back to the speed that I had before. That was my kind of litmus test. That was my indication that I was back. Clive Woodward reminded me that not to play sevens when I was on crutches. I saw him at a game, and I didn't remember the conversation actually, but he did say, "I told you not to play. I told you not to play sevens for England." So that was another sort of right. I need to get myself back, because if I've got a shot, Clive always had, and I always had a decent relationship. But you hear that from the England coach, you think, wow, what's my chances? So I had enough motivation around me, I think, as difficult as it is. But it's just a process you kind of think that you have to get through as a rugby player, part of the game.
Yeah, nice way of putting it. Okay, but of course, 4 years prior to that, your dreams of playing for England weren't destroyed by injury, and they became a reality. On the 4th of July, 98, you walked down to the turf at Newlands Stadium in the famous white of England and made your first ever appearance for the national team on the country's 98 tour of Australasia and South Africa. So I'd love to know, how did it feel to receive that call, announcing your call-up to represent England on the international stage, and what did it mean to you to wear the rose for your country on 3 occasions?
Yeah, it's quite a funny one, because what did it feel like to receive the call? Well, I mean, times have changed a huge amount, Seb, as you well know, and preparation for a tour that you've not been listed on, that you've not been taken on, but you might be sat in their mind as first reserve. I was peeved. I thought I was playing well enough, and I was peeved I wasn't on the tour in the first place. It was off season, so I was in Yorkshire with family and friends. I think it was probably a Sunday morning, actually, because they played again on the Saturday and sustained an injury. And what does a young man do when he's pretty on a pretty strict regime, when he's seeing friends in Yorkshire, probably having a couple of beers? And the call came, believe it or not, when I was in bed very early one morning at a friend's house, and he came in at God knows what time, but it's very early, and before I was properly sort of conscious, and he said, "Oh, Clive Woodward's trying to get hold of you." I didn't have a phone by the side of my bed, and in those days, and I just thought it was part dream, part true. But anyway, I sort of kind of slept it off, thinking, "Yeah, I must have had a weird dream." Then he came in again a bit later and said, "Clive," I said, "Did you come in earlier and tell me that?" He said, "Yeah, sort of 2 or 3 hours have passed." Yeah, he's trying to get hold of yourself. I thought, oh, I know what this means. My preparation was absolutely dire, but we knew no different. But it was off season. I wasn't, I might have had a week, maybe 2 weeks from not training, as we were told to. And little correspondence from the England setup to say, stay fit, keep warm. We could have you out at any time. So it wasn't the best preparation, but I was out there, obviously feeling very proud throughout South Africa. Yeah, a bit apprehensive because of the prep, and then also obviously apprehensive because of the weather forecast. And sadly, when we got to Newlands was nearly underwater. So it wasn't the most sort of romantic occasion in terms of what I'd envisaged for what's best part of 10, 11, 12 years, whatever, prior to that. But you're still wearing the rose. So, yeah, felt a little bit dropped in the deep end again. We're on the back of a tour of hell, and it wasn't what I'd envisaged to be, But so be it. It was, I don't remember a huge amount, but I just remember feeling, it was pretty incredible. Yeah, it's fond memories. Superb.
Absolutely. Okay, so in 2004, after your incredibly successful career at Wasps, your father, Brian, very sadly passed away at the age of 68, which is a tremendously tough situation to have to experience and go through, of course. So firstly, I'd like to say my condolences for that, and I commend you on your ability to play a further 7 years after having to experience that. I'd love to know who was key to your support system during that time, and what was it specifically that made you want to get back out on the pitch to continue your playing career?
Yeah, I mean, it was a tremendously tough time. I can't deny that. I think what I've learned so much from that period of my life is just that we do have the innate ability to survive. No matter how bad things seem to be, it couldn't have got any worse for me. He was my best mate. He was just there. We just had a great relationship, like any father-son would have, and he was always there. It was a tremendous journey, really, that myself and my dad went on through my rugby. You asked who was my support system. Well, to be honest with you, I mean, I could mention a couple of friends maybe that were trying their best, but there wasn't the awareness around sort of human performance and well-being then that there is now. And I've got to be honest with you, I felt incredibly alone. Didn't have that rock in my life at the time. I felt I was dealing with a lot of things by myself. If there were any resources, I didn't utilize them because, we're not talking that long ago, but, we didn't have the facilities really to talk to people like we do now. And yeah, I mean, I know those friends that were trying their best, and that's all you can ask from them. But it's a very different world we live in these days, thankfully. And I think it's actually quite nice that you've asked that question and say that sometimes the best ideas come from experience. So we are it's in its infancy, but we are in the throes of setting up something. It comes under player welfare. And from my experiences, I just think there's still a lot of, the RPA are doing a fantastic job. Hats off to Damien Hopley, and his sort of efforts have been recently recognised, which is fantastic. We're not doing anything at all to rival that, but we just feel we're gonna start sort of looking at players and looking at players' well-being and welfare, even from a financial perspective in France. Potentially starting with the South Sea Islanders as well that travel over. So it's really exciting, and I think that I just think there's more opportunities and more options for players. Or there should be more options for players, because what one organisation does so well, it might not suit every single player.
Yeah.
So we're trying to just bring more with the player and their well-being completely 100% central to what we want to provide. So yeah, I think at the time, Harvey Biljon, the ex-Wasp, he was helpful because he kind of understood my predicament and asked me to come and play for Blackheath, which is a wonderful, lovely club, and was a great tonic at the time. And I just had to figure out whether I didn't have the greatest talent at Worcester. I may have mentioned I put the conversations I was having with London Irish to one side. I just didn't feel I could, fill those obligations as a professional rugby player at the time. It was a horrible time. I felt very alone. I didn't have I didn't have that support network around me that we might see today. But I take a hell of a lot from that. I take some huge learning experiences in that really, really tough time. And those learning experiences then serve me today in everything that I do. And with that kind of with those experiences, I hope that potentially through the human performance stuff that I'm providing now to different people from different backgrounds, but we want to provide, and have a support network there for other rugby players, as I say, starting in France, then, it will be a really nice, fulfilling thing to be involved with. So, watch this space.
Perfect. I'll make sure to leave all the links and information where people can find out more about that, because what you're doing is fantastic work, and seeing what you had to go through with your own father and then translating that sort of, coping mechanism to the present day helping players nowadays is great to hear.
Yeah, thanks for your kind words. It's called Beacon Global Sports Welfare. And we're it's early days, but we really just want to, do what we can to look after every component of what, let the player concentrate on his rugby, and he'll enjoy his rugby more as a result. So it's no different to what a lot of people are doing. We'd just like to join in, really.
Fantastic stuff. Okay, so off air, we've talked about how important the topic of mental health is and how we've had our own struggles with depression in the past. I've been very public with my battle. I've been on antidepressant medication for over 6 years now, and I've done numerous charity events in support of mental health, Charity Mind, including a 10,000-foot skydive in 2019. And I know you, of course, struggle with depression due to injuries and the loss of your father, which we just talked about. So how important do you feel it is to acknowledge and be open about this topic, not just as a rugby player, but a person in general, given this crazy world we're currently living in?
By the way, are you scared of heights when you did the skydive?
It's a very good follow-up question. Less so now, but at the time, absolutely.
It just goes to show. I mean, that's a fair play to you. Yeah, I think it's important. Look, I mean, I've got my personal story. Sort of people like yourself sort of bring elements of that out, and it might be helpful to some people. And I've been. I think it can be important to be open. I just see this whole sort of mental health movement at the minute. I wish we could sort of. I wish we could sort of just collapse it for a second and then go away, rebrand it, and sort of relaunch it. Because I just feel that so many people's messages are becoming quite diluted and distorted, really. And it's how can I put this? I think it's obviously a hugely important topic in an area of our lives that we have to be careful. It's a bit like strength and conditioning. When I first signed for Wasps, we just all believed in the strength and conditioner, and he's doing his best because he's got the science that's available to him at the time. Mental health, I think, is just like that right now. We're all trying our best to offer to help them to cope with, or receive strategies and tools and all these different things. But there's more, and there's a lot more to come. So I feel it's a good thing in terms of talking but it's just that we must remain open. We must remain open to what else is out there in terms of human condition, and that's the area that I am currently exploring right now for myself. And I've been reluctant to speak out, rightly or wrongly, about the depths of my depression. I don't want to be seen to be jumping on a bandwagon. Yes, that might be wrong because my story might help somebody else in a similar situation. It's never the same, but I think I've been even asked to write a book. So again, rightly or wrongly, I get a little bit insecure about that, thinking, well, I don't want people to think I'm writing this for my own gain, for my own ego. So we'll just see. I think it's key messages are just getting lost. And I think that the delivery and how when you allow people to see for themselves and discover for themselves, you see that we don't have to just rely on the endless sort of offering of modern concepts and modalities. There's so much more. I think things like NLP, which I am trained in, is quite often missold. So yeah, it's a big important thing. One day I may talk about my story, but with a view to coming to allowing people to see that my story doesn't matter as much as people think. The reasons for my depression wouldn't matter as much as people might think, because I also think that when I say about it being sort of relaunched, achieving your potential should be exciting. Should be a lot more fun around it. And too often, if you're having a low day and you read up on mental health, it can drag you down. It can anchor you in a place where you think, oh, well, that's me then, suffering with mental health. Instead of thinking, well, let's have some fun with this, because once I come out of this lull, that's a human condition. That's what I've got available to me. So it'd just be nice if it was a little bit more fun and uplifting, really. But we'll look at that, and we'll see what happens. But the way I deliver whatever I've got, to deliver, to share, it's just simmering at the minute. Well, it's got to be right.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got two young sons, Oscar and Jude, who it's clear to see you're very close with and are making the most of lockdown at the moment, which is fantastic to see, of course. How much do your boys mean to you, and how has your experience as a father changed your life since retiring 10 years ago?
Well, my boys mean everything. Again, it's, I was lucky to have that relationship with my dad, and that just gets translated, through into my relationship with my boys. I wish I could be as good a dad as my dad was, but I try my best. They're the best tonic, the best. I've got a fantastic relationship with them. They're really good boys most of the time. It's sometimes hard, isn't it? Parenthood. I think the hardest thing is trying to steer them. Sort of from my own experiences, try and steer them and keep them on the right path, as it were. But sort of the difficulty is then trying to let them go and find out and explore for themselves. So it's never easy. And I suppose it changed. I think I maybe changed. I'm not sure. As they grow older and the challenges change somewhat. So I think testosterone kicks in, and the thing it just seems a little bit harder to separate them when they're scrapping. But all in all, I'm very lucky. They're good boys and they get on and they love each other. So that's the main thing. The second bit of the question was, how much has it changed me since?
How's your life as a father changed since retiring 10 years ago now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was in a situation where I felt at the time I had to commit everything to them. My life and the situation that I was in gave me the opportunity to do that, and I just thought it was really important. So I had some obviously quality time as they were growing up, best fun I could ever wish for. I'm very lucky because that's not available to every father, but I kind of had no choice but to be with them full time. So now they're getting a little bit older. And they've got their school commitments, and one thing or another, it just it frees up a little bit more time for me to explore and do what I want to do, and hence I've just mentioned the welfare program. It's so it's all working out quite nicely, hopefully, and I can't grumble really. They're good boys.
Fantastic stuff. And I know they're quite big into their sport, like their dad. So is there any chance we're going to see another Sampson playing for England in the future at all?
Oh, do you know what? I mean, playing for England obviously would be phenomenal, but I mean, how many of us get the opportunity to? It's to be honest with you, I had this. The reason why I'll say this is because I had this conversation with my eldest only a day or two ago, and I just said, "There's no pressure to be a professional rugby player. There's, you just must enjoy your school rugby." I mentioned how important school was to me in terms of my rugby and the teachers, but just everything that rugby offers at school. And if you're at a nice school like the boys are, just enjoy school rugby, see where it takes you. And if you're getting the interest of clubs, you have my full support. I will say, if you'd have asked me this 10 years ago, it'd have been, yeah, definitely my boys are going to be professional rugby players. In the last 3 or 4 months, I'm now getting both shoulders waking me up 4 or 5 times a night. And I'd literally, an hour ago, I did a 3K run with them, and they're off, and my back's playing up, my knees playing up, and I'm just in bits at 43. But I wouldn't change my story. I feel very fortunate and very lucky. But do I endorse rugby and going into it just to feel like I do at 43? I'm not sure. I'm not too worried if they don't. They'll do what they want to do. But I love watching them play rugby. There's nothing better. So wherever that is, as long as they're enjoying it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's a great answer. I think enjoying it is absolutely number one.
100%. Yeah, they love lots of different sports, but I used to love watching them play football. Beautiful football players, but they kind of just, if they kind of just fall out of love with something, I'm egging them on. I just used to love going to watch them play. There, the Wickham development, and there's a lot of kids that get in Wickham development, but for a little short period of time when they're young enough and they think they're going to be professional footballers, it's just something very magic about that. I just love seeing that glint in their eye. They've got the Wickham kit on, and they're playing against the likes of Luton and Chelsea, and you just think, oh yeah, it's quite, it's just fun, isn't it? So yeah. I feel very blessed, watching them do what they're going to do. So we'll get this COVID nailed, and then hopefully get into some school rugby at some point.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it. Okay, Paul, I'd love to end with some quick fire questions. Are you ready?
Certainly, yeah.
Let's do it. Okay, favorite takeaway food?
Indian, Sartaj, Old Windsor.
There you go. Nice bit of free advertising there. Okay, dogs or cats?
Dogs. Labradors, to be exact.
Okay, favorite music artist?
It's a band. It's an outfit called Bicep.
Yes. Yeah.
Very good. At the minute, love them.
Very good. Okay, favourite sports movie?
That would have to be Rocky.
Yeah.
Certainly at the time. Most definitely, yeah.
There you go. Okay, have you got any phobias? What do you fear?
I'll twist that round. I don't have any phobias as such. Not a fan of certain insects and snakes. But what do I fear? A little bit about what we're talking about. It's not a quick fire answer, I'm afraid. But
that's right.
I just want mental health to be seen as human performance, and I just like it all to be lightened, and to be and to look at the potential in people rather than it be from the bottom up. That's my fear. Is just and coaches that work in mental health that would call themselves experts. No one's a better expert about yourself than you are. So that's kind of that's it. In short, as short as I can make it.
It's a very, very good answer. Okay, who do you fear?
Probably the same people. Just remain open. Don't rely on the expert, especially if they call themselves the experts. I don't fear anyone else, I don't think.
Okay, so as a player well known for his speed, beating World Championship silver medalist Dwayne Chambers in an England schools 100-metre race in a time of 10.48 seconds in 1996, and being the cousin of sprinter Denise Ramsden, like you said earlier, did you ever consider a career on the track instead of on the pitch?
I did. I just didn't. It would have been a more difficult choice if I'd have known I could, potentially. I mean, at that age, it was about what do you do to earn a living. You don't think about what's the most fulfilling necessarily. I could never imagine not lacing boots up, if I'm being honest with you, Seb. I mean, it would have been a very difficult decision had it been the other way around, that you could go straight into a paid contract to be an athlete, and then, rugby was sort of dip your toe in and see, you don't know what you're going to earn. So it was difficult in terms of leaving athletics behind in that respect. It was difficult to, but I was just getting faster at the time. I had to then leave it and then pursue rugby. But you get the chance to show you, and I love running fast. So you get the chance to do that in rugby anyway. So you can't carry a ball down 100 meters track. So trying to get best of both worlds. So that's how I try and reason with it anyway.
I think either way, you made a very good decision. Nothing to worry about there. Okay, so in an England game against the Barbarians in May 2001, all-time great winger Jonah Lomu delivered a handoff that sent you flying. Can you describe us how that felt and what would be an equivalent from a sheer power standpoint?
Well, I said you do your research, Seb, and you haven't disappointed. Is the next question about when I scored 2 tries against his one, or anyway, we'll come to that, I'm sure.
It can be.
Well, it's the biggest day of my life up to that point. And it's still one that I reflect on, obviously. He was just magnificent, great player. And as for the tackle, I remember it. I was carrying a really bad back injury I'd sustained in a Wasps game the week before. And I promised myself I wouldn't get square on and allow him to shove it. It was actually I think it was the standard Lomu front on shunt. And as soon as I planted my feet, I felt my back, and then I just went weaker than I bloody would have already done anyway. I tried to be a speed bump at the best of times, someone like him, but anyway, I can't. Yeah, it was. I mean, you become conditioned, don't you, to all the physicality and everything, but I don't know what it's like. I don't know. It's just, it was like a small car. What I was surprised about was, I mean, I had the speed on, I'd like to think, most players because of the athletics background. I knew I'd got the speed on him, and I gave him the outside, and I just thought, I was just amazed at how quick he was for the size of him. He went, and then there's only one other player that really shocked me, and that was Rokokoko in the sevens, Joe Rokokoko from New Zealand. But when he went, I thought he can't be that quick because of his size, but he was a little bit quicker than I thought. So it was just an amazing experience. A couple of years before, I'm watching him at school, and people are coming up to me saying, well, that's you finished because look at the size of him and he's quick and but he's again another inspiration, and that's it was fantastic. So what an athlete he was.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, as a follow-up to that, how did it feel to score 2 tries to hit 1 in that game?
I didn't mean to have to do that. Well, you can imagine. There's a few phone calls back up north that night, but it was amazing. It was playing for England against these legends, stuff dreams are made of. I only wanted one opportunity to play against Jonah, and to get that, you might play in a team that's playing against Jonah in a different position, but to be straight up against him was an absolute joy. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So I didn't have to beat him for the tries, but it was still 2-1 on the day.
Let the record stand.
Yeah, exactly. No, great experience.
Okay, so playing under the great Warren Gatland for 2 years on the Wasps, how key was his insight to the team's 3 consecutive titles in the early 2000s? How much further ahead of the game was he tactically compared to the rest of the league at the time? Because obviously we know what he went on to do in the late of last decade.
Yeah, I mean, he was very different. He got a good team around him. He sort of brought in the likes of Craig White as well on the strength and conditioning. He was hard-nosed. He, by many people's experience, wasn't the best communicator. So that suited some players, maybe not others. But and I say that because, well, I was injured for most of the time, so he wasn't. I wasn't the first person on his list to communicate with, but he just made it a very hard-nosed environment, and a hard-working environment, and the players responded extremely well, in contrast maybe to other clubs and coaches that they'd worked in and with. He was phenomenal, taskmaster, but as I said, had a great team around him, had a great balance of hard work and fun. Loved the beer as well, which the boys would respond well to. So yeah, I mean, I just wish, again, that's another experience. I just wished I could have maybe played better for him and been part of his plans for longer. But I think very shortly after he arrived, I was laid up for a year. So even because he's not the best communicator, he doesn't know me, he doesn't put an arm around my shoulder. I remember trying to convince him that, last year, I was Premiership top try scorer, I'll get myself back. Having those conversations with him, sort of out of desperation, I guess. The team were going well. I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted an opportunity, yet my knee wasn't ready. So all this is going through my mind. So my experience of Warren would be different to most that are in the first team, consistently. So it's frustrating for me, but a lot of respect for Warren. And I thought, it's just a shame. But there I am thinking he's not the best communicator, and he goes on to do what he does in the game. He's got to be doing something right. So I was wrong.
No, very, very interesting. Okay, penultimate question. Who is your favourite rugby player of all time?
Of all time? I think I'd go with the one I said before. That's Christian Cullen. I think he was just, beautiful to watch. So balanced in his running. Changed direction, stepped without changing his pace. I'd say that because it's a little bit more sentimental in terms of where I was in my career. I think I even shaved my head because he did. So yeah, I think that's the one that sort of stands out for me. Not everybody's, but someone's likely to choose a 10, aren't they? Fly half, someone like that. But which there obviously have been many. But Carter's probably one of my favourite. But I think for me personally, I still love watching the clips when they come up with him now. So yeah, Christian Cullen, I'd say.
There it is. Okay, and finally, what would you change in the world today?
Try not to repeat the answers, but it does come down to human performance. I wish there was more on on the human performance side, because it is fundamental to our functionality. I think we are getting a little bit bogged down with different notions and different ideas, what's worked for other people. And we're talking again very much about the psychology of our everyday life, because it's at the forefront of my consciousness now, very much so in the work that I'm doing and where I spend a lot of my day working, what I want to achieve potentially with rugby players, but already with, with different people from all sorts of different backgrounds. So maybe just tweak rather than change. I'd just like, again, sorry to repeat myself, I'd just like mental health and human performance to be a lot more fun.
Yeah.
Seeing it from my own eyes. I've done a little bit of work with former prisoners. I've been into a prison and I've seen transformations happen. And trust me, it's a great thing to see. It's a great environment. And, people just are becoming a little bit bogged down. I hear it with my clients, all trying to achieve all these different things that they're bombarded with all day, especially now on social media, even through the news. If you can't get out for a walk and get some fresh air every day, if that's not an option to you, that doesn't mean you're going to have a bad day. So all these things, if they're not achievable, all these strategies, people actually think it's increasing the anxiety. People think, well, that means that, if that's not available to me, I can't have access to that. That's what I need in order to be happy. So it's like a self-perpetuating sort of cyclical nature of creating problems when actually people don't know what they've innately got available to them. So it would be nice to see a lot more fun involved, especially where kids are concerned. Kids are too familiar with the word anxiety without really knowing what it is, if it is anything anyway. So, it's just a little bit concerning, but it should, as I say, when you see someone transform, change, and actually discover who they truly are, it's mind-blowing. But we don't need to impose mental health on our youth, on our kids, so that they're kind of overly sensitive to the thought of being in a bad situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very good answer and a very nice way to round off this interview. So, Paul, thank you very much for your time today, for being on my show. It's been a pleasure. Where can people find you on social media, check out your coaching and get involved with anything else you've got going on?
Oh, I mean, that's the hardest question you've asked me. So, yeah, when I do use social media, Instagram, PS Wellbeing. Mm-hmm. Don't use it a huge amount, but if people do DM me quite a lot through there, and anybody can ask any questions about anything I've spoken about, anything that they're, sort of struggling with, they're going through, or if I can offer some direction, I'd be more than happy to. So yeah, PS Wellbeing, for now, yes, I think that's the best way.
Perfect. I'll make sure to leave the link below, as well as your website, of course, and people can get involved and check out all the great work you're doing. Once again, Paul, thank you very much for your time and have a fantastic rest of your day.
Cheers, Seb. Thanks for having me.
That was my interview with the incredible Paul Sampson, a top guy with a fantastic playing career, still doing amazing work to this day. From playing a further 7 years after losing his father to his battles with both injury and depression throughout his career, Paul is a huge inspiration and it was an absolute pleasure having him on my show. Make sure to go and check out Paul on all of his social media accounts, as well as all of the great work he's currently doing. All the links you need are in the description of this episode. I've got many more great guests coming very soon, so stay tuned right here on Seb Talks Sports. And to take us out as usual, here's another brilliant track by All-Pro New York Giants running back, turned music creator and friend of the show, David Wilson. Catch you soon, guys.